What's up, everybody? Today we're going to talk about why it might not be your hamstrings that are actually causing you problems. A lot of times, there's that generic touch your toe test, and then, we all, don't go nearly as far as we want to, and we go, oh, my hamstrings are tight, my hamstrings are tight. So, what I wanted to do is kind of break down why usually I don't think for a lot of people it is the hamstrings. For some of us, it really is. We can get into that later, but I want to talk about why, in a lot of cases, it's actually your calf muscles, and we'll get specific into which ones. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, this is just a side view of just a skeleton. So right off the bat, I mean, nothing crazy to see here. This is kind of where we're looking, right? We have tib and fib, attach the femur, there's the ankle. If I go forward a little bit, here's the back view. So again, this is just the skeletal structure. You don't really need to remember anything here. I just wanted to show you that this is what it looks like with nothing. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start adding a few layers of muscle. What I will say is this. I can't remember the name of any of these deeper muscles. There's like the popliteal. I forget. Don't worry about it. We'll call them plantar flexors to be generic. And honestly, if you have an issue that's much deeper than we'll just say the main plantar flexors, the gastrocs and the soleus. Um, you know, that's going to be you should be in physical therapy, sports med, some type of rehabilitative program. So I just want to show you what happens when we start adding layers. So we keep on moving forward a little bit. Here's the next layer. We got some posterior tib, more, and again, I mean, you asked me the name of these muscles, I forget. You know, I'm pretty good with the skeletal muscular system, and I just could not remember. Moving forward a little bit more, and this is when it gets a little bit interesting. So we're going to talk about this. So this is the soleus, say that big meaty thing right there. And a lot of times when people are trying to stretch out their calves, they sometimes will stretch out this muscle, sometimes not so much. You don't really need to remember this, but the soleus is a monoarticulate muscle, meaning it does not it attaches down there at the calcaneus, and then it attaches on the we'll just say the lower portion of the leg. If we move forward a little bit, we're gonna add the last layer. Now we have the gastrocs. These are like the beach muscles. Everybody wants big calves, right? Um, Basically, these muscles are different in that they are biarticulate. They're going to attach down at the, we'll say at the ankle, the calcaneus. They also attach at the femur, which is really, really important. So I'm going to move forward a little bit. Let's look at the soleus kind of isolated. So here's the soleus highlighted. And again, we'll just say it attaches here and it attaches here. Let's note that we'll say anything above that line is your femur. Anything below it is your tib and fib. So this muscle doesn't attach above. So if this muscle is super tight, it's a problem, but at the same time, it's not necessarily going to translate into what people perceive as tight hamstrings. If we move forward a little bit, this is the soleus. Excuse me, not the soleus. This is the gastroc, or one of the gastrocs. And if we actually, put that line back, and it's kind of buried, so you're going to have a harder time seeing it, but it actually is going to attach more so kind of up here, and then even though we'll just say the tendinous junction is kind of hidden, let's just say it attaches, more or less, we'll just say right there. That's really, really important, because if this muscle is tight, it means you're going to have a harder time straightening out your legs. In fact, some of the stretches I give people, they're like, oh yeah, it's not too bad, and then we put them in a position where we're opening up the gastroc, and it's like, wow, that's way harder, and I'll show you in a second. So let's move forward a little bit. We're going to talk about this. One of my favorite things to do just to keep everything nice and open. I'm using a roller here. You can use a tennis ball, a lacrosse ball, an orb ball, if you know what that is. It's a really great tool. But, rolling out the calf is going to be a very, very good thing for you to work on. Not only because it's just good for you to do, but you might find that, wow, I rolled out my calves and all of a sudden I can bend down and I can touch my toes. Maybe it wasn't my hamstrings after all. So I want to kind of show you what this looks like practically. So this is me, and obviously my legs are very bent. Now, mind you, a lot of people that can touch their toes also just have really, really flexible spines. Don't worry about that today. That's a whole separate issue. But I want to point out that as of right now, my calf muscle, I've allowed it to shorten, okay? Basically, it's attaching kind of right here and then down here. And because my leg is bent, I'm allowing that muscle to be a little bit more relaxed. Again, this will be a little bit easier on the hamstring as well, but my hamstring is open. So what happens is, what happens if I straighten out my leg a little bit more? So we're going to move forward a little bit. So now I did it where I try to keep my legs a little bit straighter, and you can see my hands are higher, higher up in the air. I'm still fairly low, but at the same time, my my gastrocs are they're not fully extended. So I'm still able to get fairly low. My hamstrings are getting a nice little stretch, but I'm still, I'm a little bit higher than I was now that my legs are a little bit straighter. Move on a little bit more, and now my leg is in full extension. I'm wearing jogging pants, so it's kind of hard to see. It's my massively muscular hamstrings that make me look like my leg is bent. That's a joke. No, my leg is locked out here, and I'm even higher now. It may not look like it, but trust me, I could feel it. And all of a sudden, I am getting a stretch, back there in the hammies, but I'm feeling it mostly, and a lot of people say, yeah, I don't feel it so much in the hamstrings. I feel it kind of right in this region, more specifically. I'm like, oh, I feel it more behind the knee, which happens to be right where the gastrocs cross over and then attach onto the femur. So a lot of times when I'm doing my stretches, what I'll do is I say, well, let's try to really work on opening up the gastroc. So here's a little trick. What if I were to put a book underneath one of my toes? So now not only is my leg straight, but now I've actually put myself into a slight plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. So you can see my foot now, before flat. There's my line. If we move forward a slide, all of a sudden, I'm now dorsiflexed. So what that's doing is it's a calf stretch. People say, oh, I want to stretch my calves out, so I'm gonna put my try to put my toe on a wall and put my heel on the floor. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but this would be one way to do a little calf stretch. But all of a sudden, I mean, what's interesting is this quote unquote hamstring stretch that I'm doing. Look how much higher I am. I mean, that's a pretty big distance. Some irony. Ironically, that textbook right there is my old anatomy textbook. So suck on that, Dr. Canavan. I'm still using it technically. Dr. Canavan's awesome, by the way. But again, my toe is only elevated, and I'm on carpet, mind you, so the book is actually squishing in, but so I'm only up maybe, an inch to half an inch, and all of a sudden, I mean, that's a huge difference. So one thing I have people do when they're stretching at their hamstrings is don't forget to try it once in a while with I'll say both or a toe elevated. A lot of times what I'll do is my other foot is actually flat on the floor, so I'll spend some time opening, in this case, my left leg. Again, toe is going to be just elevated, leg is going to stay nice and locked out, and you're only going to go as far as your leg allows you to. I could have probably gone lower if I just let my spine just completely noodle, but again, that's not really helping me at all. And I'll spend, I don't like to, people say how much time. I'm not going to give you a time. What I'll do is I'll count for, 3 to 5 deep breaths. Each breath is going to be about, 10 seconds long, deep exhalation, and just let yourself sink deeper into it. Remember, if you just push through a stretch as hard as you can, the muscle's response is going to be to actually tighten up on you, to contract, and that's not exactly what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to let the muscle return to a resting length. But this is a great way to open it up, and then kind of to top it all off, I just want to kind of show you, as far as the roller, you actually don't want to put the roller or a tennis ball right behind your knee. If you do that, you can find out really quickly that the area will inflame up pretty quick. It's not very fun, but spend some time, we'll just say, working kind of through this region. Don't shy away from putting pressure even right there on the Achilles. Assuming that you're not murdering it, a little bit of pressure. I'll do some ankle movements with the roller right there, and the Achilles is a great way to kind of work through some adhesions down there. But I'll really spend a lot of time really here this whole area, and I actually prefer a tennis ball. I just couldn't find mine for this photo, but spend some time working on these things. There's a lot of other stretches that you can do that will really, I guess, be helpful. But I mean, again, this is my getaway of filming. I actually just make a PowerPoint and I shoot a video of it. But spend some time really opening up the gastrocs, because if you don't, it doesn't really matter how flexible or, you know, non-flexible your or inflexible, not non, your hamstrings are. You're gonna run into problems. So I wanted to show this to you. So just remember, if you're having trouble with the typical hamstring stretches, it might not be your hamstring. I'll try to put something out on those later on. A little bit more of a nerdy breakdown for you, but again, this is why a lot of times I tell people, yeah, hamstrings. Let's get them. Let's do some openers, but really let's spend a lot of time doing some tissue work on the plantar flexors or the calves. All right. Hope this was helpful.